Okay, so I am sitting down with my friend Rebecca today, and we are going to talk about adoption. And she has an amazing story that I'm excited myself to learn more about today. Rebecca, thanks so much for sitting down.
Good morning.
I'm so excited.
Oh, I am too.
It's going to be good.
Yes.
So, tell me a bit about your family story.
Well, whenever my husband and I got married, we of course tried to have biological children. It was about 5 years into our marriage that we realized that I'm infertile. So
That was a no-go.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we went to the doctor and we tried, treatments, just basic things. And the doctor told me, this can happen in 2 months or it can happen in 2 years. We don't know. So my husband and I, we didn't try for very long. It was like, we finally made the decision, you know what, we can keep putting our money into a chance to have a child, or we can invest in a life. And even though we didn't have a lot of money at the time, and we knew we were going to go the private adoption route, we put our faith in God, and we were like, we're going to do this. So that's what we did. And our first child came a couple years after that through a private adoption agency, the Love Basket, in Hillsboro, Missouri. We lived in Arkansas at the time. And she was born, and it was like a month after she was born, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Next kid, let's go. And my husband is like, can we wait until our baby's a year old? And I'm like, okay, fine. So it was a year and a month later that we found a picture of these 3 precious little faces on the internet that were in foster care, and they were available for adoption. So I showed my husband, and of course he was like, all right, we're doing this, let's go, let's start this adoption process. So a few years later, we welcomed home a 5, 6, and 7-year-old. And so my life went from 1 child, 1 toddler, to having 4 kids. And I was, to say the least, overwhelmed. And just not only dealing with life, but just dealing with having to learn how to do laundry and to cook for all these people. And
The struggle is real.
Exactly.
Even if you get them every few years, it's
Right.
still so hard.
Oh,
You
yes.
wear so many clothes and eat so much food.
Exactly.
Motherhood is, our friends understand this.
Okay,
I'm sure.
Good. So I was done. My hands were full, my heart was full, and I was like, we're good. And my husband said, let's do 1 more boy. And
I
I'm
just
like,
read your story on that the other day, and I loved it.
oh gosh, I was like, seriously? Like, really? I mean, I had been the one, moving forward this adoption thing. What happened to this guy?
Yeah. Why are we suddenly putting this into motion again?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, I'll let someone else tell him no. I'll put all these stipulations on it. So then, someone else can tell him no, and,
Yeah.
they can break it to him.
So what kind of stipulations did you
did.
get?
So it was like, he has to be younger than 2, And
So that's hard to find.
Right, and it has to be a boy. And in foster care, I mean, that's not unheard of, but a lot of times, if a foster family would adopt the baby, a small child, if they come available. So I'm like, this is not going to happen. And then, no one's going to give us a 5th child, right? So
Sure.
yes, so okay, sure, yeah, let's do this. So we saw our adoption specialist send us this picture of this little boy with a super sad face and little pudgy cheeks, and I was like, oh, of course I fell in love. And he wasn't 2 years old yet, and I'm like, man, really?
Because God had that for you.
Exactly. So
yes, I love that.
So of course we welcomed home our last little boy.
And all of your children are so precious.
Oh, thank you.
I just love them. My husband actually has some of them in class, and so
Mhm.
that's fun. I've gotten to know a few
yes.
of them a little bit. I'm not that I'm ever there, but we know of them a little
Exactly.
bit. So it's fun. And I get to see you around because you are neighbors with a friend of mine. So that's fun. I've gotten to know your children just a little bit.
A little bit,
And they're
yes.
so adorable.
They are.
That's
fun.
pretty much what I know about them, is that they're adorable and they're fun.
That's all you need.
Yeah. So was this domestic adoption for all 4?
Right.
All 5? All 5 domestic adoption? All 5 out of foster care?
The one was a private adoption. Our first one was private.
Okay.
So that's where you pay money to an agency, and
Yeah.
they put you together with a birth mom. The birth mom picks you from your profile. So that's what happened there. And we had an open adoption with her parents, which I was
So that's a private open adoption.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have an open adoption with your parents.
Right. And at first, my husband and I were both like, that's really not something we want to do. But as we looked into it further, we're like, this could really benefit our child.
Wow.
And then we have seen it benefit our other children, our extended family, her birth family, her extended birth family. And then it's so good for her when she has questions. I can say, let's call your birth mom and just ask her. Let's just find out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you have a good relationship with her birth mom.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't sure that was how that would go. I mean,
No. And
so by the grace of God, it's
exactly.
been a good
And
relationship.
it can't work with everybody. She makes it work. And she recognizes me as mom. You know, from the first day in the hospital, she's like, "Oh, baby's crying. Here, go to mama." So and he gave the baby to me. Yeah. So she can make that work.
So that was a really God ordained relationship.
Oh yes. Yeah. Well, God laid adoption on my heart whenever I was in high school. I was in Sunday school class, and my youth pastor showed us this video of these kids in Romania that were in an orphanage, and they didn't cry because they didn't get held. They had lots of issues, obviously, because they weren't touched, they weren't held, and that broke my heart. Even as a young teenager, I realized, coming from a good home, that you need that in your life. You need a hug. You need someone to affirm you, and especially as a baby.
Yeah.
And so right then I'm like, I told my mom, I'm adopting children. And of course I thought, I'll have biological children first, and then I'll adopt kids.
Yeah.
But and that's not the way it went, which is fine for me.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. What are your biggest challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges would have to be that not everyone understands adoption. They don't understand where my children have come from. Even though I have good adoption situation stories from some of my children, and I have not so good adoption stories from their backgrounds. But
so you have a mix of both.
Right.
You have some positive and some not.
Right. And but with adoption is loss, basically. They have lost a parent in some way. Yeah. And so there's trauma with that. You can take that a long way, throughout your lifetime. And people don't always understand that. And I parent a very different way. And I obviously don't announce, I am doing this with my child because of this situation, right? So I have had several friends and family members that, kind of give me the side eye, like, why would you do that? Or why would you say that? But there's always a backstory. And that's one thing I've learned.
And it's not everyone knows the backstory of why we do things as moms, and you have a whole other situation there that a lot of parents maybe don't have.
Right.
So something that they can't even grasp.
Exactly.
Because it's a whole, so they're like, why are you doing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
there's a reason.
There is a reason. I've learned to not judge other people, for sure, and other moms. Of course, I think all of us, before we have children, we know
we're all the right
things
mom until we become a mom.
Yes, and then you quickly realize there's no.
And even that first child, you can still hang on to that level of crazy for a while.
Yeah.
And then it's gone.
Yeah.
No, that's not real.
Oh yes. Yes.
So with their child, now we're real.
Exactly.
Or further into the first child. After a while, it was like, okay. Now it's real time.
You're not as cool as you thought you were.
Yeah, it's just real. So, what has been one of your greatest joys as an adopted mom?
Being able to see that me as a sinner, I was an enemy to God. I was an orphan to God. And whenever I decided to follow Jesus, I became one of God's children.
I like where this is going.
I know, right? So seeing that play out in the lives of my children and in my own life, people say constantly, oh, your children are blessed. And they are. But me and my husband are so much more blessed than they will ever be because of what we have been through with them and what they have taught us. Whenever at our adoption finalization, both my husband and I both had to sit on the stand. We had to say, we're going to feed these children, we're going to clothe these children, and we're going to give them our inheritance, which is kind of hilarious. But yes, we're going to give them our inheritance. And that's exactly what God did for us.
That's like the third thing. We're going to give them our inheritance. Really?
Yeah.
They would say that. Wow.
Exactly. Yes. So me, an orphan before I knew Jesus as my Savior, I didn't have a last name. My kids didn't have a last name before they were adopted. And I got to get on the stand and say, I'm going to take care of these kids. They're going to have an inheritance one day, and they're going to have the last name of Allie, and they're going to be a part of my family. And so I have that legal document. If anyone wants to say, where do these kids come from? Who are these kids? They're my kids. I have this legal document that says that. and my name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and I have an inheritance one day whenever I die because of Jesus as my Savior.
That's so good.
Yes.
And I wonder, do your kids kind of grasp that analogy at all yet? Do your oldest ones?
I don't think so.
One day they will.
Yeah, they will.
Do you want to share with a family who feels like maybe they have that desire in their heart that's starting to adopt, much like my own?
Okay, here we go.
What's in perspective?
Well, there's different avenues, like you talked about. There's the private adoption, there's the adoption from foster care, and there's international adoption. And they all come with different, basically they're the same. You need to go through a background check. You need to have a physical. You need to fill out the mounds of paperwork. But there's also different things associated with them. Private adoption is a fee, a considerable fee if you go that way. From foster care, it is basically free. You need to pay very little cost for your background check and that sort of thing. But other than that, it's free. International adoption is different from each country. There is different stipulations and different times on how long you have to stay in that country afterwards and how many times you have to travel there and all of that. Yes. So you need to do your research.
Yeah.
Of kids with trauma, attachment issues, learning how to attach. Whenever you birth a child, you're already working on that attachment while the child's in the womb, and then whenever they come out, you're there. And with adoption, that's not always the case. So there is a lot of attachment issues.
And like you talked about earlier, there's loss involved with that. And so when a child's been in an orphanage, not only were they not laid on your chest immediately when they were born, they've maybe had some form of neglect, depending on what kind of orphanage they were in.
Right.
Because I'm sure there are lots of, from what I know, there are a lot of variations
of
what that's going to look like.
Yes.
And so different levels of attachment, just to adults in general, are already there. Encourage the mom who's at the very beginning, like the ball's already rolling, but she's at the beginning of her adoption journey. What would you say to her?
I would say to keep going.
Just keep going.
I know a lot of people, they get into the process and they think, I know, like I did, I got into the process and I thought, the faster I work on this, the faster I'm going to get a child. And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And I was very zealous and excited, and that just didn't happen that way. So I had to push, and I had to ask questions, and I had to write lots of emails and calls and things like that. So if you're starting out, it might not go exactly like you think it's going to go. So flexibility, and then yes, to keep just chugging on. It's totally worth it. And if you think that this is something that you are called to do, that you're supposed to do, that you want to do, then don't forget that and keep going at it.
Right. Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation. I think that this might be an encouragement to others, because I bet it's not just you and I who have always had this in our hearts, and maybe other people in high school sat down and saw the adoption videos or had a diagnosis that said, you may or may not have your own children, and for whatever reason, God put that in our hearts. And so I'm so thankful that you had the willingness to sit down and have this conversation.
I appreciate you asking me.
Oh, I'm so glad that I thought of you, and maybe we've cleared up some misconceptions for some people. And I think you've been such an encouragement too.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks so much.
Thank you.
I see the work of your hands, galaxies spinning a heavenly dance. Oh God, all that you are is so overwhelming. And I hear the sound of your voice. All at once it's a gentle and thundering noise. Oh God, all that you are is so overwhelming. I delight myself in you, captive